My 7-year-old grandson, Leo, grabbed my hand tight as we sat at the dinner table. His little voice trembled as he whispered in my ear, "Grandma Isabella, that's not really Mommy." I looked across at my daughter-in-law, Chloe, serving dinner with her usual smile, and my blood ran cold. Leo had been acting strange for weeks, but I thought it was just childhood imagination. Now, seeing the fear in his eyes as he stared at the woman we all called Mommy, I realized something was terribly, impossibly wrong in my son's house. "Great to have you here. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where this story found you." The casserole dish clinked against the wooden table as Chloe set it down, steam rising from what should have been her famous chicken and rice. But something felt different about the way she moved, the way she held herself. After 20 years of Sunday dinners at my son Michael's house, I knew Chloe's every gesture, every expression. This woman looked exactly like her, spoke like her, even wore Chloe's favorite apron with the sunflower pattern. Yet my grandmother's intuition was screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. "More green beans, sweetie?" the woman asked Leo, her voice carrying Chloe's familiar warmth. But Leo shrank back in his chair, pressing closer to me. "No, thank you," he whispered, his small hand still gripping mine under the table. I studied Chloe's face as she served Michael his portion. Her smile was perfect, her movements graceful, but there was something in her eyes I'd never seen before, a calculating quality that made my skin crawl. When she laughed at Michael's work story about his demanding boss, the sound seemed rehearsed, like an actress playing a role. "Mom, you're awfully quiet tonight," Michael said, looking at me with concern. "Everything okay?" "Just tired, honey," I replied, forcing a smile while my mind raced. I couldn't tell him what Leo had whispered. How could I explain that his wife might not be his wife? It sounded insane, even to me, but Leo's small fingers squeezed mine tighter, and I knew he felt it too. Children have an instinct for danger that adults often lose. They sense when something is wrong long before logic catches up. "Grandma Isabella, will you read to me tonight?" Leo asked, his voice smaller than usual. "Of course, baby," I said, brushing his curly hair with my free hand. Chloe looked up from her plate, and for just a moment I caught something flash across her face. Annoyance? Suspicion? It was gone so quickly I almost thought I'd imagined it. "Leo, you know Grandma doesn't need to come upstairs every Sunday," she said with a light laugh. "You're getting too old for bedtime stories." My heart stopped. In 7 years, Chloe had never once discouraged our bedtime ritual. She knew how much it meant to both Leo and me, especially after his grandfather passed away 2 years ago. It was our special time, our way of keeping family traditions alive. "I don't mind, at all," I said carefully, watching her reaction. "Oh, I know you don't," she replied, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I just think Leo should start becoming more independent." Leo's grip on my hand became almost painful. I could feel him trembling slightly, and my protective instincts flared. Whatever was happening here, my grandson was afraid, and that was unacceptable. After dinner, I helped clear the table, observing everything. Chloe loaded the dishwasher differently than usual, putting the plates where she normally put the bowls. When Michael mentioned their upcoming anniversary, she paused for just a beat too long before responding, as if calculating what the correct answer should be. 15 wonderful years, she said finally, but I knew it was actually 16 years. Michael didn't seem to notice the mistake, too absorbed in scrolling through his phone. As I gathered my purse to leave, Leo tugged on my sweater. "Grandma, can you stay a little longer?" The desperation in his voice broke my heart. I knelt down to his level, looking into his bright brown eyes that reminded me so much of Michael at that age. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You can tell Grandma anything." He glanced toward the kitchen where Chloe was wiping down counters, then leaned close to my ear. "She doesn't sing the cleanup song anymore," he whispered, "and she forgot my favorite snack. Real Mommy would never forget my favorite snack." A chill ran down my spine. Chloe had been giving Leo apple slices with peanut butter every day after school for 3 years. It was their special routine. something she'd started when he was picky about eating fruit. Today, I'd noticed her offer him crackers instead. "Maybe Mommy's just having a busy week," I said gently, but Leo shook his head. "No, Grandma. She's different. She smells different too. And yesterday, she called me kiddo. But Mommy never calls me that. She always calls me my little lion because of my name." My blood ran cold. Leo was right. Chloe had called him my little lion since he was born, a sweet play on his name that made him giggle every time. I'd heard this woman call him Leo and Sweetie, but never once had I heard her use that special nickname. "Leo, come say goodbye to Grandma," Chloe called from the doorway, her voice pleasant but firm. As I hugged my grandson goodbye, he pressed something small into my palm. I kept my expression neutral, slipping whatever it was into my pocket. "See you next Sunday, Grandma Isabella," Chloe said, kissing my cheek. Her perfume was different too, something floral and expensive instead of the vanilla scent Chloe always wore. "Of course, dear," I replied, studying her face one more time. Every feature was exactly right, from the small scar on her chin from a childhood accident to the freckle near her left ear. But the soul behind those eyes felt like a stranger. In my car, I sat in the driveway for a moment, hands shaking as I pulled out what Leo had given. "Mate." It was a small piece of paper with his careful 7-year-old handwriting. "Help me find real Mommy." As I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, my mind raced with impossible possibilities. People didn't just get replaced, but Leo's fear was real, and my instincts were screaming that danger surrounded my family. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, that crumpled note on my nightstand. Tomorrow, I would start looking for answers, because if there was even a chance that something had happened to my daughter-in-law, if someone was living in her place, then Leo was in danger, and I would move heaven and earth before I let anyone hurt my grandson. Whatever was happening in my son's house, I was going to find out the truth, even if no one believed me. Even if it sounded impossible, because sometimes a grandmother's love is the only thing standing between a child and the unthinkable. The woman at that dinner table might look like Chloe, sound like Chloe, and fool everyone else, but she couldn't fool a grandmother's heart, and she certainly couldn't fool a 7-year-old boy who knew his mother better than anyone. Something was terribly, impossibly wrong, and I was going to make it right. Monday morning came too early, but I was already awake. Leo's note spread flat on my kitchen table beside my coffee cup. "Help me find real Mommy." Those 5 words had haunted me all night, replaying in my mind like a broken record. I'd raised 2 sons and helped raise countless grandchildren, but I'd never seen fear like what I witnessed in Leo's eyes. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Michael's contact. My finger hovered over the call button for several minutes before I set it down again. How could I tell my son that I suspected his wife wasn't his wife? He'd think I was losing my mind, suffering from some kind of age-related paranoia. But a child's instincts don't lie, and neither does a grandmother's heart. Instead, I decided to do what any sensible woman would do. I started keeping a journal. Tuesday evening, I called Michael under the pretense of checking on Leo's upcoming school project. When Chloe answered the phone, I paid careful attention to every word. "Hi, Isabella," she said warmly. "Michael's still at work, but Leo's right here doing homework." "Wonderful," I replied. "Could you remind me what his project is about again? I want to help him research." There was a pause, just a heartbeat too long. "Oh, you know, the usual 2nd grade stuff. Animals, I think." My pen flew across the notebook page. The real Chloe would have known exactly what Leo's project was about. She'd been talking about his presentation on African elephants for weeks, helping him practice his speech every night. This woman didn't even know the topic. Could I speak to him for a moment? "Of course, Leo. Grandma Isabella wants to talk to you." When Leo's small voice came through the phone, I could hear the strain immediately. "Hi, Grandma." "Hello, my little lion," I said deliberately, using Chloe's special nickname for him. "Grandma," he whispered, and I could tell he was moving away from wherever Chloe was standing. She still doesn't call me that, and today she made me a sandwich with mustard, but I hate mustard. Real Mommy knows I only like mayonnaise. My heart ached for him. "What else, sweetheart?" She doesn't know where my Band-Aids are. When I scraped my knee yesterday, she looked in the wrong cabinet. And Grandma," his voice dropped even lower, "she asked me what my teacher's name is. Mommy talks to Mrs. Patterson all the time." I wrote furiously, documenting every detail. A mother doesn't forget her child's teacher's name or where she keeps the first aid supplies. These weren't small oversights. They were fundamental gaps in knowledge that no parent should have. Wednesday, I drove past Michael's house during my usual grocery run. Through the living room window, I could see Chloe sitting on the couch, but she wasn't doing anything, just sitting there, staring at the wall like she was lost in thought. The real Chloe was always busy, always moving, always engaged in some project or activity. She'd be folding laundry, reading a book, or organizing something. She never just sat still. I parked across the street and watched for 20 minutes. She barely moved, just occasionally looking around the room as if she were studying it, memorizing it. Thursday brought the most unsettling discovery yet. I'd stopped by unannounced around lunchtime, something I did occasionally when I was in the neighborhood. Chloe answered the door wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise, irritation, fear. "Isabella, what a lovely surprise," she said, but her body language was tense, blocking the doorway slightly. "I hope you don't mind, dear. I was returning Leo's library book and thought I'd say hello." "Of course not, come in." As I stepped into the familiar hallway, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The family photos on the hallway table had been moved. The real Chloe was meticulous about the placement of those pictures. She'd arranged them in a specific way that told the story of their family's growth, with their wedding photo in the center and Leo's school pictures forming a timeline around it. Now they were just randomly placed, as if someone had been studying them and hadn't put them back correctly. "Would you like some coffee?" Chloe asked, leading me toward the kitchen. "That would be lovely." I watched as she opened cabinet after cabinet, clearly searching for the coffee mugs. The real Chloe could have reached for them blindfolded. When she finally found them, she chose 2 mismatched cups instead of the matching set Chloe always used for guests. "How has Leo been?" I asked, settling into my usual chair at the kitchen table. "Oh, you know how kids are," she replied vaguely, fumbling with the coffee maker. "Growing so fast." The real Chloe would have launched into detailed stories about Leo's day, his latest achievement, or some funny thing he'd said. She lived for those moments of maternal pride and always shared them with family. "Has he mentioned his upcoming field trip to the Science Museum?" Another pause, another calculating look. "Yes, he's very excited about that." There was no field trip. I'd made it up to test her, and she'd failed completely. "Chloe, honey, are you feeling all right? You seem a little distant lately." For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Something cold and sharp that made my blood freeze. But it was gone so quickly I wondered if I'd imagined it. Just tired, I suppose. Michael's been working so much overtime and managing everything alone can be exhausting. But the real Chloe thrived on independence. She'd often told me how much she enjoyed having time to herself when Michael worked late, using those hours to pursue her painting hobby or catch up on her favorite books. I left that day with a growing sense of dread and a notebook full of evidence that something was terribly wrong. This woman knew facts about Chloe's life, but she didn't know Chloe's heart, her habits, her natural instincts as a mother. Friday evening, I called Michael directly. "Dad, I'm worried about Chloe," I said carefully. "She seems different lately. Has she been under a lot of stress?" Michael sighed. "Mom, I know she's been a little scattered, but we're all adjusting to some changes. Maybe you're reading too much into things." "What kind of changes?" "Well, she's been sleeping differently, eating different foods. She even asked me to help her reorganize her closet because she said she couldn't remember how she'd arranged everything. I figured maybe she was going through some kind of life phase. You know how women can be." My hands trembled as I gripped the phone. A woman doesn't forget how she organized her own closet. She doesn't suddenly change sleeping patterns that have been consistent for years. And she certainly doesn't lose familiarity with her own home and routines. "Michael, when did these changes start?" "I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago. right around the time she went to visit her sister in Portland for that long weekend. She came back, seemed refreshed, but different. More distant, I guess. 3 weeks. That's when Leo started acting strange, when I first noticed something was off during our Sunday dinners. And Chloe had never mentioned having a sister, let alone one in Portland. In 20 years of family gatherings, birthdays, and holidays, she'd never once spoken about siblings. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my notebook spread before me, documenting every inconsistency, every wrong detail, every moment when this woman had revealed herself as an imposter. Because that's what she had to be, as impossible as it sounded. The question that kept me awake wasn't whether something was wrong. It was what had happened to the real Chloe, and how far this deception went. If someone was living Chloe's life, wearing her face, sleeping in her bed and caring for her child, then where was my daughter-in-law? And more terrifyingly, what were this woman's intentions toward my family? I looked at Leo's note one more time before turning off the light. Tomorrow, I would start digging deeper, because my grandson was counting on me, and I wouldn't let him down. A 7-year-old boy shouldn't have to live in fear in his own home, and a grandmother's love was about to become a very dangerous thing for whoever was threatening my family. Saturday morning, I did something I never thought I'd do in my 72 years on this earth. I became a spy. Armed with my notebook, a thermos of coffee, and a determination born from a grandmother's fierce love, I parked 3 houses down from Michael's home and began what I could only call surveillance. At 7:30, Michael left for his Saturday morning jog, just like he had every weekend for the past 5 years. Through my binoculars, which I'd borrowed from my late husband's bird-watching collection, I watched the woman I was supposed to call Chloe move through the house. She was in the living room, and what I saw made my blood run cold. She had family photo albums spread across the coffee table and was studying them intently, like a student cramming for an exam. She had a notebook of her own, and I watched her write things down as she flipped through pages of our family memories. She was learning to be Chloe. My hands shook as I adjusted the binoculars. This wasn't a woman having memory problems or going through a difficult time. This was someone systematically studying my daughter-in-law's life, her relationships, her history. The deliberate nature of it was terrifying. When Leo appeared in his pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes, I saw her quickly close the albums and tuck the notebook under a couch cushion. She hugged him, but even from a distance I could see the stiffness in her movements, the calculated nature of her affection. Leo pulled away quickly and disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, I saw him at the back door, looking around the yard like he was searching for something or someone. The loneliness in his small posture broke my heart. I stayed until Michael returned from his run, then drove home to plan my next move. That afternoon, I did something that felt like a betrayal but was necessary for my family's safety. I called Isabella Ruiz, Chloe's best friend since college. Isabella, it's Isabella Jones, Chloe's mother-in-law. Oh, hi, how are you? It's been too long since we've talked. I'm fine, dear, but I'm calling because I'm worried about Chloe. Has she seemed different to you lately? There was a pause. You know, it's funny you should ask. I've been trying to reach her for weeks, but she keeps making excuses not to get together. Last time we talked, she seemed, distant, like she was distracted or something. When was the last time you actually saw her in person? That's what's weird. She canceled our coffee date 3 weeks ago, said she was going out of town to visit family. But Isabella, Chloe doesn't have any family. You know that, right? Her parents died years ago and she was an only child. My pen flew across the notebook page. No family, no sister in Portland. This woman had lied to Michael about where she'd been during those crucial 3 weeks when everything changed. Isabella, has Chloe ever mentioned anyone named Zoe to you? Zoe? No, I don't think so. Why? I hesitated, then decided to take a chance. I need to ask you something, and I need you to promise me you'll keep it between us for now. Of course. You're scaring me a little, Isabella. What's going on? I think someone might be impersonating Chloe. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Isabella Ruiz whispered, That's impossible. But, oh my God, that would explain so much. What do you mean? She called me last week, and when I mentioned our tradition of watching those terrible romantic comedies together every month, she acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. And when I asked about her painting, she changed the subject completely. Isabella, we've been best friends for 15 years. She tells me everything about her art. It's her passion. Another piece of evidence. The real Chloe painted watercolor landscapes in the spare bedroom Michael had converted into her studio. She'd shown me her work proudly, talked about local art shows she wanted to enter. This woman had avoided the subject entirely. Isabella, I need your help, but what I'm going to ask you might sound crazy. After what you just told me, I'm ready for crazy. I need you to come to Sunday dinner tomorrow. Watch her carefully. Ask her specific questions about things only the real Chloe would know, but be subtle about it. I'll be there. Sunday couldn't come fast enough. I arrived at Michael's house early, using my key to let myself in. Leo ran to me immediately, wrapping his arms around my waist with desperate relief. Grandma Isabella, I'm so glad you're here. I knelt down to his level, speaking quietly. Leo, I need you to help me with something very important. Can you be brave? He nodded solemnly. I need you to tell me everything you remember about when Mommy started acting different. Everything, no matter how small. His dark eyes filled with tears, but he took a shaky breath. It was after she went away for the weekend. When she came back, she looked exactly the same, but she felt different. Different how? She used to sing while she cooked. She knew all my favorite songs, but now she doesn't sing at all. And she used to tell me stories about when she was little, but when I asked her to tell the one about the puppy she had, she said she never had a puppy. I wrote everything down. What else? She doesn't know where anything is. She had to ask me where we keep the flashlights when the power went out. And Grandma, she doesn't smell like Mommy anymore. Mommy always smelled like vanilla and paint, but this lady smells like flowers. Leo, this is very important. Do you remember anything about the weekend when Mommy went away? She said she was going to see Aunt Sarah, but I don't have an Aunt Sarah, and when she came back, her suitcase was different. It was black instead of blue, and it had wheels. Mommy's suitcase doesn't have wheels because she says they're too noisy. A chill ran down my spine. Even a 7-year-old had noticed details that the adults had missed. This imposter had returned with different luggage because she was a different person entirely. When Isabella Ruiz arrived for dinner, I watched the woman claiming to be Chloe greet her best friend. There was a moment of hesitation, a flash of panic in her eyes before she smiled and hugged Isabella. It's so good to see you, she said, but her voice lacked the warmth and familiarity of a 15-year friendship. During dinner, Isabella Ruiz was brilliant. She asked casual questions that seemed innocent but were actually tests. Chloe, remember that disastrous camping trip when we were 25? When you insisted we could find our way back without a map? The imposter laughed. Oh yes, that was quite an adventure. But Isabella Ruiz and I exchanged a look. The real Chloe had a paralyzing fear of camping and had never spent a night outdoors in her life. And how's your watercolor series coming along? The one with the lighthouse scenes? It's going well, the imposter replied vaguely. Another wrong answer. Chloe painted landscapes and gardens, never coastal scenes. She told me many times that she found ocean imagery too melancholy. As the evening progressed, the imposter failed test after test. She didn't know that Chloe was allergic to shellfish. She couldn't remember the name of the cafe where she and Isabella always met for coffee. She had no reaction when Isabella mentioned David, supposedly Chloe's ex-boyfriend, even though Chloe had never dated anyone named David. After dinner, while Michael was loading the dishwasher, Isabella Ruiz pulled me aside. Isabella, that is not my best friend, she whispered urgently. I don't know who that woman is, but she's not Chloe. Everything about her is wrong. Her mannerisms, her responses, even the way she holds her fork. I know, I whispered back. The question is, what happened to the real Chloe? We have to call the police. With what evidence? A grandmother's intuition and a 7-year-old's observations? They'll think we're crazy. Then what do we do? I looked toward the kitchen where the imposter was laughing at something Michael had said, playing the role of loving wife and mother, while my real daughter-in-law was God knows where. "We find proof," I said grimly, "real, undeniable proof. And we find out what happened to Chloe." That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my car outside Michael's house again. Through the bedroom window, I could see the imposter moving around, and she was doing something that made my heart race. She was talking on a phone, pacing back and forth with animated gestures. But when Michael appeared in the doorway, she quickly ended the call and hid the phone. She had a secret phone, a secret life, secret communications with someone. This was bigger than just identity theft. This was a carefully planned deception, and someone else was involved. As I drove home through the dark streets, one thought consumed me. If this woman was willing to go to such elaborate lengths to steal Chloe's life, what had she done to the real Chloe to make it possible? And how far would she go to protect her secret? I was about to find out, because nothing was going to stop me from protecting my family and finding the truth, even if it killed me. Monday morning found me at the kitchen table with my laptop, empty coffee cups surrounding me like a caffeinated fortress. At 72, I wasn't exactly a technology expert, but desperation makes you learn fast. If someone was impersonating my daughter-in-law, there had to be a trail somewhere, some digital footprint that would lead me to the truth. I started with what I knew, Chloe Martinez before she became Chloe Jones. Born in San Antonio, moved to our city for college, met Michael at a coffee shop during her junior year. No living family. Parents died in a car accident when she was 19. At least, that's what we'd always been told. But what if it wasn't the whole truth? I typed Chloe Martinez San Antonio into the search engine and spent hours scrolling through results. Most were dead ends. But then I found something that made my heart skip a beat. An old newspaper article from the San Antonio Express News, dated 15 years ago. Local woman survives crash that killed parents. There was a photo, and it was definitely Chloe, but she looked young and devastated, standing next to what appeared to be another woman who looked exactly like her. The caption read, "Chloe Martinez, left, with her twin sister, Zoe Martinez, right at their parents' funeral service." Twin sister, Zoe Martinez. My hands trembled as I reread the article. It mentioned that both daughters survived the crash but were estranged due to ongoing family conflicts. The article was brief, but it confirmed what I'd suspected. Chloe had a twin sister she'd never told us about. I dove deeper, searching for Zoe Martinez San Antonio, and what I found made my blood turn to ice. Arrest records, multiple arrest records. Zoe Martinez had a criminal history spanning over a decade. Theft, fraud, identity theft, and something called aggravated impersonation. She'd been arrested 5 times, served 2 prison sentences, and had been released just 6 months ago after serving 3 years for elaborate identity fraud. I printed everything, my hands shaking as page after page emerged from my printer. Police mugshots showed a woman who was absolutely identical to Chloe, but with something harder in her eyes, something calculating and cold. The most recent arrest report was the most chilling. Zoe Martinez had been convicted of assuming another woman's identity for 2 years, stealing her job, her apartment, and her savings before disappearing. The victim had been found locked in a storage unit, barely alive after months of captivity. I sat back in my chair, the full horror of the situation washing over me. This wasn't just about someone pretending to be Chloe. This was about a dangerous criminal with a history of imprisoning her victims. If Zoe was living Chloe's life, then where was my real daughter-in-law? My phone rang, interrupting my racing thoughts. It was Isabella Ruiz. "Isabella, I've been thinking about yesterday all night. We have to do something." "I know, and I have news. Terrible news." I told her about the twin sister, the criminal record, the pattern of identity theft and imprisonment. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she whispered, "Oh my God, Chloe never told me she had a twin sister. In 15 years of friendship, she never mentioned her once. There has to be a reason for that. From what I can tell, they were estranged, probably because of Zoe's criminal behavior. Isabella, if this woman has been impersonating people for years, and if she's hurt them, we have to find Chloe. We have to find her now. I know, but I need more information first. I'm going to keep digging. After hanging up, I called the San Antonio Police Department. After being transferred 3 times, I finally reached Detective Naomi Brooks, who had worked on Zoe's most recent case. Detective Brooks, my name is Isabella Jones, and I think Zoe Martinez is impersonating my daughter-in-law. There was a pause. Ma'am, Zoe Martinez is supposed to be in a halfway house in Dallas, reporting to her parole officer weekly. Well, she's not. She's living in my son's house, sleeping in my daughter-in-law's bed, and taking care of my grandson. And my real daughter-in-law is missing. That's very serious. Zoe is extremely dangerous. Her pattern is to study her victims for weeks or months, learn everything about their lives, then replace them while keeping them prisoner somewhere. My heart pounded. How long does she usually keep them? In her last case, it was 2 years. But Mrs. Jones, I have to tell you, not all of her victims survived. She's escalated over the years. If you're right about this, your daughter-in-law is in immediate danger. What do I do? First, do not confront her. Do not let her know you suspect anything. Zoe is unpredictable and violent when cornered. Second, I need you to gather any evidence you can. Photos, video, anything that proves she's not who she claims to be. Third, find out if she's made any large purchases recently, rented any storage units, or acquired any properties. That's usually where she keeps her victims. I'll do whatever it takes. Mrs. Jones, I'm going to drive up there today. This is a federal case now because she's violated parole and crossed state lines. But until I arrive, you have to be very careful. Zoe Martinez is not just a con artist. She's a predator. After the call, I sat in my kitchen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I'd discovered. My daughter-in-law was likely being held prisoner somewhere, possibly for weeks, while this dangerous criminal lived her life and cared for my grandson. But I couldn't fall apart now. Leo was counting on me, and somewhere out there, Chloe was depending on someone to find her. I decided to take a different approach. If Zoe was keeping Chloe somewhere, she'd need supplies. Food, water, medications. I started checking local stores, asking if anyone matching Chloe's description had been buying unusual amounts of supplies. At the 3rd pharmacy I visited, I hit gold. "Oh yes," the pharmacist said when I showed him Chloe's photo. "She's been coming in every few days for the past few weeks, always pays cash, which is unusual, and she's been buying some odd combinations of things." "What kind of things?" "Sleeping aids, pain medication, protein bars, bottled water. Large quantities. And she always seems nervous, keeps looking over her shoulder." "Did she ever mention where she was taking these supplies?" "No, but I remember thinking it was strange. She bought enough sleeping pills to knock out a horse, said she was having terrible insomnia, but the quantities didn't make sense for personal use." Sleeping pills. Enough to keep someone sedated. My stomach turned as I realized Zoe was likely drugging Chloe to keep her compliant and quiet. "Did you happen to see what kind of car she was driving?" "Actually, yes. Black SUV, looked pretty new. I noticed because she always parked way in the back of the lot, like she didn't want to be seen." I thanked the pharmacist and sat in my car, trying to think. A black SUV, cash purchases, medical supplies for keeping someone unconscious. The pieces were falling into place, but I still didn't know where Chloe was being held. That evening, I did something that terrified me. I drove past Michael's house again, but this time, I followed the black SUV when Zoe left. She drove for 20 minutes outside of town, to an area I wasn't familiar with. Storage facilities, warehouses, and abandoned buildings dotted the landscape. She pulled into a storage facility called Safe Keep Storage and parked in front of Unit 247. I watched from behind a dumpster as she unlocked the unit and went inside. She was carrying a bag from the pharmacy and several bottles of water. She stayed inside for about 10 minutes, and when she came out, she looked around carefully before driving away. My heart pounded as I approached Unit 247. The metal door was locked, but there was a small window near the top. I found a crate to stand on, and what I saw inside made me nearly collapse. Chloe was there. My real daughter-in-law was lying on a cot, unconscious, with bottles of water and medication scattered around her. She looked thin and pale, but she was alive. I called Detective Brooks immediately. I found her, Safekeep Storage, Unit 247. She's alive but unconscious. How fast can you get here? 20 minutes. Whatever you do, don't go inside. If Zoe comes back and finds you there, she'll panic, and there's no telling what she might do. As I waited in the darkness, watching over my daughter-in-law from a distance, I thought about Leo sleeping at home with a dangerous criminal pretending to be his mother. I thought about Michael, completely unaware that his wife was imprisoned 20 minutes away. But mostly, I thought about how far a grandmother's love could take her. Because tomorrow, this nightmare was going to end. Tomorrow, I was going to bring my family back together, no matter what it took. Zoe Martinez had picked the wrong family to destroy. She had no idea what a grandmother's fury could accomplish. Detective Naomi Brooks arrived exactly 20 minutes later, followed by 2 federal agents and Officer Daniel Morales from our local police department. In the dim light of the storage facility parking lot, she looked exactly like what I'd imagined, competent, determined, and ready for action. "Mrs. Jones, you've done incredible work," she said quietly as we huddled behind her unmarked car. "But from here on out, we handle this. Zoe Martinez is extremely dangerous, especially when cornered. I understand, but I need to be here when you get Chloe out. She's going to be confused and frightened, and she'll need a familiar face." Detective Brooks nodded. "We'll get her medical attention first, but yes, having family nearby will help her recovery." One of the federal agents was setting up equipment to monitor the storage unit. Heat signature confirms one person inside appears to be lying down, no movement detected. My heart ached, thinking of Chloe alone and drugged in that terrible place for weeks. How terrified she must have been when she realized what was happening. How many times had she hoped someone would find her? "Mrs. Jones," Detective Brooks said, pulling me aside, "I need you to understand something. Based on the medication purchases you tracked down, Chloe has been heavily sedated for weeks. She's going to need significant medical care, and her recovery will take time. The psychological trauma alone—" "She's strong," I said firmly, "stronger than anyone knows, and she has people who love her waiting to help her heal." Officer Morales was preparing bolt cutters for the storage unit lock when his radio crackled. "Unit 12, we have eyes on the suspect vehicle returning to the location." My blood turned to ice. Zoe was coming back. "Everyone take positions," Detective Brooks commanded. "Mrs. Jones, get in the car and stay down." But I couldn't hide in the car, not when Chloe was so close and Zoe was about to walk into a trap that could go terribly wrong. I crouched behind a concrete barrier where I could see everything unfold. The black SUV pulled up to Unit 247, and I watched Zoe get out. In the parking lot lights, she looked exactly like Chloe. But now that I knew the truth, I could see the differences. Her movements were more aggressive, more calculated. She carried herself like a predator, not like the gentle woman who had loved my son for 16 years. She was carrying another pharmacy bag and a fast food container. Even as a prisoner, she was keeping Chloe alive. That gave me hope that this nightmare might end with both women surviving. Zoe unlocked the storage unit and stepped inside. I could hear her voice, though I couldn't make out the words. Was she talking to Chloe? Checking on her condition? The thought of this monster speaking to my daughter-in-law made my skin crawl. After a few minutes, she came back out, but instead of locking the unit and leaving as she had before, she stood in the doorway, looking around the parking lot suspiciously. Had she noticed something? Sensed that something was wrong? Detective Brooks made a hand signal, and suddenly the storage facility was flooded with lights and voices. "FBI! Zoe Martinez, you're under arrest!" Zoe spun around, and for a moment, she looked exactly like a trapped animal. Wild, dangerous, calculating her options. Then she did something that made my blood freeze. She darted back into the storage unit and slammed the door shut from the inside. "She's got the victim in there with her," one of the agents shouted. "This is now a hostage situation." My heart stopped. Zoe was alone in that unit with Chloe, and there was no telling what she might do when she realized her game was over. Detective Brooks was on her radio, calling for backup and a hostage negotiator. "We need someone who can talk her down. She's unpredictable and the victim is unconscious and unable to protect herself." "Let me talk to her," I said, stepping out from behind the barrier. "Absolutely not, Mrs. Jones. You're a civilian, and she's extremely dangerous." "But I'm the only one here who understands what this is really about. This isn't just identity theft. This is about family, about jealousy, about a sister who wanted what Chloe had." Through the thin metal door of the storage unit, I could hear movement, possibly Zoe trying to wake Chloe up. If she was planning to use my daughter-in-law as a human shield, we were running out of time. "Detective, please, let me try to reach her." As one woman to another, as someone who understands family complications. Detective Brooks looked at the federal agents who nodded grimly. "5 minutes, Mrs. Jones, but if this goes sideways, you follow our lead immediately." I approached the storage unit door, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. "Zoe," I called out, "my name is Isabella Jones. I'm Chloe's mother-in-law." Silence from inside the unit. "I know who you are, Zoe Martinez. I know about your history, about what happened between you and Chloe when you were younger." "You don't know anything," came a voice from inside, and it was chilling how much it sounded like Chloe, yet completely different. "I know you're Chloe's twin sister. I know you've been estranged from each other for years, and I know you're hurting." "Hurting?" The laugh that came through the door was bitter and cold. "You have no idea what hurting is." "Then tell me. Help me understand why you did this." There was a long pause, and when Zoe spoke again, her voice was raw with years of buried pain. "Do you know what it's like to watch your sister get everything you ever wanted? Perfect marriage, beautiful child, family who adores her, while you get nothing but judgment and rejection?" My heart broke a little, even knowing what she'd done. "Chloe never mentioned you. Why?" "Because I embarrassed her. Because I made mistakes and she was ashamed to have a criminal for a sister. She cut me out of her life completely. Wouldn't even let me meet my nephew." "So, you decided to steal her life?" "I decided to see what was so special about it. What made her deserve happiness while I got prison and loneliness." "Zoe, I can understand feeling left out, feeling rejected, but Chloe is innocent in this. And Leo is just a little boy who misses his mother." "That little boy is my nephew," she shouted. "I should have been part of his life from the beginning. I should have been the aunt who spoiled him and loved him, but Chloe made sure that never happened." I could hear movement inside the unit, and my fear for Chloe intensified. "It's not too late, Zoe. You can still be part of Leo's life, but not like this. Not by hurting his mother. She's unconscious anyway. The drugs will wear off eventually, but she won't remember much of this." I made sure of that. "What did you plan to do with her?" Another long pause. "I don't know. At first, I just wanted to see how long I could make it work. But then, living her life, being loved by her family, taking care of Leo, I started to think maybe this could be permanent. By keeping her prisoner forever, by making everyone forget she ever existed." The coldness in her voice made my blood freeze. This wasn't just about jealousy or family rejection. This was about a woman who had decided that taking her sister's life was preferable to building her own. "Zoe, please, open the door. Let us help Chloe and let us help you too. This doesn't have to end with more people getting hurt." "Help me?" She laughed bitterly. "I'm going back to prison for the rest of my life. There's no help for someone like me. There can be, if you don't make this worse than it already is." I could hear Detective Brooks behind me, coordinating with the other officers. Time was running out, and I could sense that Zoe was becoming more agitated, more desperate. "Zoe, think about Leo. Whatever anger you have toward Chloe, that little boy loves his mother. He's been scared and confused for weeks, and he needs her back. He could learn to love me instead. Maybe he could in time, if you were his aunt instead of his mother's captor. But not like this. This will only teach him to fear you." Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I heard the sound of the metal door unlocking. "I'm coming out, eh?" Zoe called, but I want to see my nephew one more time before they take me away." "That can be arranged," Detective Brooks called out. The door rolled up slowly, and there was Zoe Martinez, looking exactly like my daughter-in-law but moving like a stranger. Behind her, on a cot surrounded by bottles and medical supplies, lay Chloe, unconscious but breathing. As the officers moved in to arrest Zoe, I rushed to Chloe's side. She was pale and thin, but alive. Her pulse was steady, and she was breathing normally. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," I whispered, stroking her hair. "You're safe now. We're taking you home." As the paramedics loaded Chloe into the ambulance, I watched Zoe being led away in handcuffs. For just a moment, she looked back at me with tears in her eyes. "Tell Leo his Aunt Zoe is sorry," she said quietly. And despite everything she had done, despite the terror she had put our family through, I found myself nodding, because even monsters can be someone's broken sister, and even justice can leave room for forgiveness. But first, we had to focus on healing. Chloe was going home. The hospital waiting room felt like a sanctuary after the horror of that storage facility. Chloe was in the ICU, slowly recovering from weeks of sedation, while doctors worked to flush the drugs from her system and assess the full extent of her physical and psychological trauma. Michael sat beside me, his face pale with shock, holding Leo, who had finally stopped crying. "I still can't believe it," Michael whispered for the 10th time. 3 weeks. She was gone for 3 weeks, and I didn't know. How did I not know? Because Zoe studied her, honey. She knew everything about Chloe's life, her mannerisms, her habits. She was convincing because she'd been planning this for a long time. Leo looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Grandma Isabella, is real mommy going to be okay?" "Yes, sweetheart. The doctors say she's going to be just fine. She'll need some time to get better, but she's strong." Detective Brooks approached us with a clipboard and a gentle expression. "Mrs. Jones, I need to get some more details from you for the report. And Michael, we'll need a formal statement about the behavioral changes you noticed." Michael ran his hands through his hair. I should have listened to my mother. I should have paid more attention. Leo kept trying to tell me something was wrong, and I dismissed it as childhood imagination. "Dad, don't blame yourself," I said firmly. "Zoe was a professional con artist. She fooled everyone except Leo, and children have instincts that adults often ignore." Dr. Lorraine Carter, the family therapist the hospital had called in, sat down across from us. "I want you all to understand that recovery from this kind of trauma takes time. Chloe has been through something incredibly difficult, and when she wakes up, she's going to need all of your support and patience." "Whatever she needs," Michael said immediately, "whatever it takes." "And Leo," Dr. Carter continued, "you've been very brave through all of this. You knew something was wrong, and you helped save your mother by telling your grandmother the truth." Leo nodded solemnly. "I just want my real mommy back. You're going to have her back very soon." Isabella Ruiz arrived just as the doctor came out with an update. She'd been at the hospital since we called her, refusing to leave until she knew Chloe was safe. "She's awake," the doctor announced, and we all stood up at once. "She's confused and disoriented, which is normal given what she's been through. We can allow family members to see her briefly, but please keep it calm and reassuring." Michael, Leo, and I went in first. Chloe was propped up in the hospital bed, looking fragile and thin, but her eyes were clear and focused. When she saw us, tears began streaming down her face. "Michael? Leo? Where am I?" "You're in the hospital, sweetheart," Michael said, taking her hand carefully. "You're safe now." "I don't understand. There was a woman who looked like me. She said she was my sister, but I don't have a sister. She kept giving me pills, and I couldn't stay awake, and I was so scared." Leo climbed carefully onto the bed and hugged her gently. "It's okay, Mommy. Grandma Isabella found you. The bad lady is gone now." "Grandma Isabella?" Chloe looked at me with confusion and gratitude. "You found me?" "Leo found you, sweetheart. He knew you weren't you, and he never stopped believing in his real mommy." Chloe held Leo close, crying softly. I tried so hard to stay awake, to find a way to escape, but she kept drugging me, and everything was so foggy. I thought no one would ever find me. We'll never let anything like this happen again, Michael promised. Never. Detective Brooks came in a few minutes later with more information about Zoe's arrest and the charges she would face: federal kidnapping, identity theft, violation of parole, and attempted fraud. She'll be going to prison for a very long time, she told us, but we need to discuss something else. Zoe has requested to see Leo one more time before she's transferred to federal custody. Absolutely not, Michael said immediately. I understand your concern, but she's specifically asked to apologize to him. Sometimes, for a child's psychological healing, closure can be important. Dr. Carter nodded. If Leo wants to see her, and if you're all present, it might actually help him process what happened. He's been carrying the burden of knowing something was wrong for weeks. I want to see her, Leo said quietly. I want to tell her that she was mean to my mommy. We arranged for the meeting to take place in a secure conference room at the police station, with Detective Brooks, Dr. Carter, and all of us present. Zoe was brought in wearing handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, looking nothing like the polished woman who had been living in our lives. When she saw Leo, her composure cracked. "Hi, Leo," she said softly. "You're not my mommy," Leo said, with all the dignity a 7-year-old could muster. "No, I'm not. I'm your Aunt Zoe, your mommy's sister, and I did something very wrong. You made my mommy sick and scared." Zoe's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, I did, and I'm very, very sorry. Your mommy didn't deserve what I did to her. Why did you do it?" Zoe looked at all of us, then back at Leo. "Because I was jealous of your mommy's beautiful life. I wanted a family like yours, but instead of working to build my own family, I tried to steal hers. That was wrong and selfish and mean. Are you going to jail?" "Yes, for a very long time." Leo thought about this for a moment. Good. Mean people should go to jail. Then, in a gesture that surprised everyone, Leo looked directly at Zoe and said, "But I'm sorry you were sad about not having a family. Maybe if you had asked nicely, we could have been friends." Zoe broke down completely, sobbing as she was led away. Even I found myself wiping away tears, because despite everything she had done, she was still a broken woman who had chosen the wrong path to healing. 3 days later, Chloe came home. We decorated the house with balloons and welcome signs, and Leo had drawn pictures of their family to put up everywhere. Isabella Ruiz had organized a meal train with neighbors and friends, ensuring that Chloe wouldn't have to worry about cooking while she recovered. But the most important moment came that evening when Chloe was sitting on the couch with Leo curled up beside her, reading him a bedtime story. "My little lion," she said softly, using his special nickname, and Leo's face lit up with pure joy. "I missed that so much, Mommy. I missed you more than you'll ever know." Michael and I watched from the doorway, both of us crying happy tears. "Mom," Michael said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't listened to Leo, if you hadn't investigated, a grandmother's job is to protect her family," I said simply. "Even when it seems impossible, even when no one believes you, you never stop fighting for the people you love." Later that night, as I sat in my own living room with a cup of tea, I reflected on everything that had happened. A month ago, we'd been a normal family dealing with normal problems. Then, a 7-year-old boy's whispered warning had led us into a nightmare that could have destroyed us all. But it hadn't destroyed us. Instead, it had shown us the strength of our bonds, the power of trust, and the importance of listening to those we love, especially the smallest voices. Zoe Martinez was facing federal charges and would spend decades in prison. Chloe was beginning the long process of healing from her trauma, supported by family and friends who loved her. Leo was sleeping peacefully in his own bed, knowing his real mommy was safe downstairs. And I was reminded once again that a grandmother's love is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. When someone threatens your family, there's no limit to what you'll do to protect them. The nightmare was over, but the love that had seen us through it would last forever. 6 months later, I sat in Chloe's art studio watching her paint again for the first time since the ordeal. Her hands moved across the canvas with the same gentle confidence I remembered, creating a beautiful landscape of rolling hills and wildflowers. The vanilla and paint scent that Leo had missed so much filled the air, and everything felt right with the world again. "Grandma Isabella, look what I made for you," Leo said, running into the studio with a drawing in his hands. It showed our whole family standing together, including a stick figure with gray hair labeled Grandma the Hero. "I love it, my little lion," I said, hugging him close. "But you know what? You're the real hero in this story. You never stop believing in the truth." Chloe looked up from her painting with a peaceful smile. "He's right, Isabella. You saved my life. If you hadn't listened to Leo, if you hadn't trusted your instincts, we saved each other," I said firmly. "That's what families do." The past 6 months had been a journey of healing for all of us. Chloe had worked with Dr. Lorraine Carter to process her trauma, and while there were still difficult days, she was stronger than ever. Michael had learned to pay closer attention to the people he loved, never again dismissing concerns as mere imagination, and Leo had grown into an even more observant, confident little boy who knew his voice mattered. Zoe Martinez was serving a 25-year federal sentence. In an unexpected turn, she had started writing letters to our family from prison, not asking for forgiveness, but sharing her own journey toward understanding why she had made such destructive choices. We hadn't responded, but knowing she was getting psychological help gave us some peace. "You know what the best part is?" Chloe said, adding a touch of yellow to a painted sunflower. "Leo talks about what happened without fear now. He knows he was brave, and he knows his family will always listen to him." That evening, as we gathered for our weekly Sunday dinner, the table felt complete again. Michael carved the roast while Chloe served her famous cornbread, and Leo chattered about his school project on community helpers. "I wrote about Grandma Isabella for my report," he announced proudly. "Mrs. Patterson said she's never heard of a grandmother detective before." "Well, I'm not really a detective," I laughed. "I'm just a grandmother who loves her family very much." "The best kind," Michael said, raising his glass of sweet tea in a toast, "to Isabella Jones, who taught us that a grandmother's love can overcome anything." As I looked around that table at my son, my daughter-in-law, and my grandson, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not for the nightmare we'd endured, but for the strength it had revealed in all of us. We'd faced the unthinkable and emerged closer than ever. But most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important truths. Leo's whispered. Warning had seemed impossible, but a child's love for his mother had guided us to salvation. That night, as I tucked Leo into bed, he looked up at me with serious brown eyes. "Grandma Isabella, will you always protect our family?" "Always, my little lion. That's what grandmothers are for." "Good," he said with a satisfied smile. "Because I'll always tell you if something feels wrong again. And I'll always listen." As I drove home through the quiet streets, I reflected on how much our lives had changed. The local news had covered our story, calling it the grandmother detective case, and I'd received hundreds of letters from families sharing their own experiences with trusting children's instincts and elderly wisdom. One letter particularly touched my heart. A grandmother from Tennessee wrote that after hearing our story, she listened when her grandson said his babysitter was different. It turned out the woman had been stealing from the family and inappropriate with the child. Because this grandmother remembered Leo's courage, another child was protected. Detective Naomi Brooks had become a friend, often calling to update me on how our case was being used to train other officers about elder involvement in investigations. "You've changed how we approach these cases," she told me. "We're teaching officers to take grandparents' concerns seriously, especially when children are involved." The ripple effects continued throughout our community. Isabella Ruiz started a support group for families affected by identity theft and kidnapping. Chloe, when she felt strong enough, began speaking at these meetings, sharing her experience and helping other survivors. Isabella showed me that healing isn't just about recovering from trauma, Chloe told the group one evening. It's about turning your pain into purpose, your experience into empowerment for others. Dr. Lorraine Carter approached me about co-writing an article for a psychology journal about the importance of intergenerational communication in crisis situations. Your story demonstrates something we've long suspected, she explained. Children often process danger differently than adults, and elderly family members have wisdom and time that younger adults lack. Together, they form an incredible protective network. Michael had also transformed. He took a leave of absence from work to focus on family recovery, and when he returned, he'd been promoted to a position that allowed him more flexibility. I learned that success means nothing if you're not present for the people who matter, he told his colleagues. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in Leo himself. His teacher, Minna Patterson, told us he'd become a leader in his classroom, helping other children feel safe speaking up when something worried them. He tells them that grown-ups should always listen to kids and that brave children help protect families, she shared with a smile. The school even invited me to speak at their Grandparents' Day event. Standing before dozens of children and their grandparents, I felt the weight of responsibility and privilege. Your voices matter, I told the children, and your love makes you powerful, I told the grandparents. Together there's nothing you can't overcome. As autumn arrived, our family had settled into new rhythms. Leo had started calling me Grandma Detective, a title I wore with pride. Chloe's art had evolved to include pieces inspired by resilience and recovery, with one painting titled Found, winning a local art competition. But the most precious moment came last month during Leo's school play. As he stood on stage speaking his lines about community helpers, he caught my eye in the audience and winked. In that moment, I knew he understood the lesson that would serve him his entire life. When people you love are in danger, you never give up, you never stop fighting, and you never ignore the voice in your heart that says something is wrong. The detective work was done, but the grandmother work would continue forever. Because protecting your family isn't a single heroic act. It's a lifetime commitment to listening, loving, and staying vigilant. As I drove home through the quiet streets, I thought about all the grandmothers out there who might be reading this story. Trust your instincts. Listen to the children in your life. When something feels wrong, investigate. And never, ever stop fighting for the people you love. Because a grandmother's love is the most powerful force in the universe, and sometimes it's the only thing standing between your family and danger. My name is Isabella Jones, and I've learned that age is just a number when it comes to protecting those we love. No matter how impossible the situation seems, no matter who believes you, never stop fighting for your family. Love always wins. Thank you so much for staying until the end. Your support keeps this channel alive. Please like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Until the next story, take care.